Hi friends, I'm Fallen Messiah, and welcome to another Diablo 4 video on this festive Sunday. In the last video, we explored some problematic aspects of Diablo 4. The video caused a bit of a stir, and it provoked conversation about the topic that I find to be very important, which is exactly what I hoped for. A lot of people engaged with the video, so I would like to thank all of you for your support. But now, we're back to things we love best, playing the game and crafting some amazing builds that make the game so much fun. And this build in particular is my favorite. Cataclysm Druid. Other than being probably the most fun build I've ever played in the game, it is also special to me for another reason too. My Cataclysm Druid video during the PTR for Season 7 that I made 4 months ago remains to this date my most popular one, with over 7,000 people having watched it so far, which is huge for a channel of this size. And it sort of helped to kickstart things for me as someone who one day aspires to do this full time. So it's safe to say that this build is a bit sentimental for me. So that's why when I heard that the snapshot mechanic is getting completely removed in Season 8, I was a bit sad. It's not that I particularly liked snapshotting. In fact, I find it to be tedious and stupid, but it was undeniably powerful, which basically meant that Cataclysm Druid would be essentially dead, right? Or would it? I didn't want to let go of this build without a fight, so I spent a lot of time theory crafting and trying to find a way to make it work. And since you're watching this video, obviously I have. So, like an Easter bunny bearing gifts, on this Easter, I'm giving you my rendition of Cataclysm Druid for Season 8. So, sit back and get comfortable as I take you through everything you need to know. But before I do, these videos take a long time to make, so if you want to support me, please consider subscribing. It's free, and it tells me that you're interested in this kind of content, which motivates me to do more of it. Anyway, let's get straight to it. Alright guys, let's start with the skill portion of this build. Even though most things are the same as in my Season 7 guide, some things are different. So I will try and go over this very quickly, and I will explain things in a little bit more detail in the gameplay portion of this video that's coming up a little bit later. So, you're starting off with Maul, Enhanced Maul. This is not a damage dealer, this is just to have Fortify and also to keep the uptime of our Provocation passive, which I will talk about a little bit later. Polarize, Enhanced Polarize, and Primal Polarize. Polarize is our main spirit spender. Every second time we cast Polarize, we gain Ancestral Guidance buff. This is our Paragon legendary node, and we gain a buttload more damage every time it's active. 3 points into Iron Fur, just for extra damage reduction. We're gonna have this on pretty much all the time. Earthen Bulwark, Enhanced and Preserving. This is both a defensive and offensive option. We gain Unstoppable and more Fortify, but also it synergizes well with our Backlash passive. So ideally, we will be casting Earthen Bulwark before Cataclysm to take advantage of this 16% extra multiplicative damage for 5 seconds. 2 points into Ancestral Fortitude, 2 points into Vigilance, 1 point into Cyclone Armor. This is what I call a 1 point wonder. You basically just put it here for a little bit more of an extra defensive bonus, and it just sits there in your skill bar without you ever really needing to activate it. I find it very convenient. However, if you already sorted out your resistances and you want some extra damage, what you can do instead is you can take off a point or two from these, for example. So I took a point from Vigilance, Fortitude, and Cyclone Armor. I put it into Roar, Enhanced, and Innate for that 15% extra increased damage. This is option number 2 if you want to have more offensive bonus. But personally, I think this works better for me, and this is what's going to be in the guide. 3 points Nature's Reach, 3 points Feral Aptitude. We're coming over here, Hurricane, Enhanced Hurricane, Savage Hurricane. 3 points Charged Atmosphere, 3 points Electric Shock, and 3 points in Endless Tempest. This is one of the most important passives in the build. It makes our Cataclysm last for a lot longer, and it's honestly even more important now in Season 8 because as we can no longer snapshot, refreshing the duration of Cataclysm doesn't really do anything for us. So the longer it lasts, the more we overpower. So always make sure to have as many ranks here as you can spare. 1 point into Mending, this is just so that we can get here Provocation. Provocation says that when we remain in Rebirth form for an X amount of seconds, our next non-defensive skill overpowers. This is what makes the build work in this rendition, in Season 8. The entire gameplay is revolved around this passive, so max this out, and ideally you want to be using Shroud of False Death as well, because it cuts down the amount of time that we can overpower from 12 seconds to 8, which is a huge buff. Again, I will explain this in the gameplay portion of this video, just know for now this is very important. 1 point Neurotoxin, 3 points into Envenom. Just like with any other Druid build, this is our biggest damage scaler, so make sure to get as much ranks here as possible, and ideally you would have it in the Amulet too. 3 points Defiance, Natural Disaster, Resonance, 5 points Cataclysm, of course, Prime, Supreme, 3 points Quick Shift, also another big damage multiplier, and here I put 3 points into Heightened Senses. These are basically 3 extra points that you can put wherever you feel like. I think the combination of damage reduction and movement speed works really well for the build, but if you think you need more damage reduction, you can take off, for example, rank or 2 here of Heightened Senses, and you can put it in Ancestral Fortitude and Vigilance, or you can maybe put them here, Defensive Posture, if you feel you need more Fortify. So this is a little bit more flexible. I put them like this. This is what's going to be in the guide, but you can play with these 3 points how you choose. And finally, we have Ursine Strength. This is the key passive that we'll be running. It's going to allow us to overpower for tremendous amounts of damage. Now we're going over to the item portion of this video. I will try not to waste too much of your time here because items are pretty much exactly the same as they were in the previous guide. But just in case that you're not returning from the previous guide and this is your first time seeing Cataclysm Druid, I will still explain the item choices in detail. But if you're coming from the previous build, feel free to skip this portion of the video. So on Helm, we're rocking Tempest Roar. Tempest Roar makes our Storm skills into Werewolf skills. This allows our Cataclysm to be tagged as Werewolf, and then we can also tap into different multipliers like Quick Shift, for example. The only stat you need here is Willpower percentage. Legendary affix and any other affix here are completely irrelevant. So ideally, you want the greater affix on Willpower, and ideally you want to Masterwork Willpower 3 times. Shroud of False Death is an item that's basically mandatory for this build to work, because not only does it provide us with so much utility and damage reduction, it also cuts down Provocation from 12 seconds overpowering to overpowering every 8 seconds. So ideally, you want to get this item as fast as you can. Stat-wise, all stats is important, but max life is the most important affix, because in any overpower build, life equals damage. So make sure to get greater affix maximum life and triple masterwork it if you can. For gloves, we have Runeworker's Conduit. Over here, I have Willpower, max life, and critical strike chance. Our boss power, which I will explain later, is going to give us 100% critical strike chance, so you will not need crit strike chance on this gear. I needed critical strike chance for this demonstration to work, but ideally you want your third affix to be something defensive based. I had fire resistance here. In my opinion, fire res is the most important resistance because there's so many things in the game that do fire damage, and this is what's going to be in the guide as well. So willpower, max life, and fire resistance. We want to have greater affix maximum life and triple masterwork it if possible, exactly in the way that I did here. Now the value of this affix is completely irrelevant. The only thing that we need here is the second power that says your lightning bolt damage is increased by 15% multiplicative for every 100 willpower. So in this build we are stacking several different things. We're stacking life because not only does it help us beat defenses, it also helps us with the overpower damage, but we're also stacking willpower because willpower double dips on this build and provides us with more Cataclysm damage. And this aspect is half of a reason why. So our lightning bolt damage is increased multiplicatively for every 100 willpower, and our Mjolnir ring says that our Cataclysm receives lightning bolt benefits. So you can see how we're double dipping and triple dipping with different things here. So affix here completely irrelevant, just get the legendary aspect. So here you want the hurricane duration and lightning bolt damage. For pants we're going with storm shifters, willpower, max life, and armor. Pants are going to be our main source of armor cap. So for Temperance we're going with total armor percentage and again hurricane duration. For affixes, we of course want willpower, but max life is the most important affix. Try to masterwork that as much as you can. If you struggle with armor, masterworking total armor percentage is also a not bad idea, like I did here. Stormshifter says that while our Hurricane is active, we gain 5 ranks to shapeshifting skills, and because Tempest War makes our Cataclysm into a Werewolf skill, this slaps 5 ranks on our Cataclysm, which not only decreases its cooldown but also increases the damage as well. For boots, we're going with Flicker Step. Flicker Step has some pretty nice affixes that benefit the build, so we have movement speed, which is always welcome, ultimate damage, lightning res, and damage reduction from close enemies. And there's also this legendary power which says that every time we evade through opponents, we reduce our Cataclysm cooldown. However, this item is not nearly as good in Season 8, because unlike in Season 7, where we always want to hit Cataclysm every time it's off cooldown, in Season 8, we're actually minding our Cataclysm recast depending on the buff counter, which I will again explain a little bit later. So you actually can replace Flicker Step with something else. So if you're struggling defensively, you can take Legendary Boots and slap some resistances and armor on them, so this is definitely something that you can change. Okay, now let's talk about weapons. Because this is a build that focuses on an ultimate ability, we are not spamming it like a core skill. We want our ultimate to pack the biggest punch that it possibly can. That's why our weapons need to have 0.9 attacks per second. This means their base damage is the biggest. This means either mace or polearm. Ideally, we want mace. Mace is best in slot because of the overpowered damage implicit. If you cannot get mace, then get polearm, but ideally it should be either one or the other. For stats on the mace, we're going with willpower, maximum life, and overpower. For tempers, lightning bolt damage, and chance for Cataclysm to deal double damage. This is the biggest multiplier on this build. This is just a straight up 2 times more damage. No ifs, no buts, just up to 100% extra damage. So, you want to make sure you get this chance for Cataclysm to deal double damage as high as you possibly can, to triple masterwork it if it's possible. I only managed to double masterwork it and I got a little bit unlucky with the temper, but it is what it is. For aspect, we're going with the Epogeic Furor. Every time we cast an ultimate skill, it increases our further casts of ultimate skill all the way up to 200% of multiplicative damage. In Season 7, this aspect was the reason why we kept spamming Cataclysm every time it's off cooldown, but now we don't really get to do that. This aspect still benefits our build, but just not as much as it used to. However, it's still best in slot, so make sure you have it on your weapon. Now let's talk amulets. We want willpower, we want envenom. Ideally, the third one would be quick shift or other kind of offensive passive, but if you can't get that, life is perfectly fine, because life also provides damage multiplication on overpower builds. So something like this is fine, because it's very unlikely you're going to find a good amulet with willpower, envenom, and quick shift. This is a good alternative. This is what I have. Ideally, you want to masterwork envenom because it's still the biggest damage multiplier we have, but whether it's envenom, whether it's willpower, that's fine. For tempers, we're going with lightning bolt damage and cataclysm cooldown reduction. Although you will find that in this build you already have more than enough cooldowns, so cooldown reduction is not nearly as important in Season 8, but it's still a nice stat to have. For aspect, we have Changeling's Depth. We deal up to 98% damage while hitting crowd control enemies as a werewolf. Because Cataclysm is a werewolf skill, and Cataclysm on level 5 always slows enemies, this is just another huge damage buff that's active all the time. For rings, ring number 1 is Irida's Inexorable Will. This ring just has some amazing stats that are really great for our build. So we have willpower percentage, lucky hit chance, damage to close enemies, and ultimate cooldown reduction. The most important stat here is willpower percentage. Try to masterwork it the way I did here. This is our biggest damage scaler on this item. Ultimate cooldown reduction is nice, but it's not as important as it was on Season 7 because, again, we are not spamming Cataclysm off cooldown. But it's still a nice stat to have. The legendary power says that every time we activate Cataclysm, we pull all the monsters to us, and then 5 seconds later we do the same thing. This is a very nice way to crowd control enemies, so overall this is just a good ring to have on this build. And the most important item in this entire build, the item that actually makes the whole thing work, is the Mjolnir ring. So while Cataclysm is active, we deal up to 100% extra damage, and also because it has been reworked in Season 7, it also says that Cataclysm receives our Lightning Bolt benefits, and we are stacking our Lightning Bolt damage in every chance we get. So this ring alone provides us with huge damage multipliers. as far as the stats on this ring are concerned. First, the most important stat is Endless Tempest. This is the duration of Cataclysm, because even though we can no longer snapshot, which means that we cannot simply refresh the duration of Cataclysm and have it keep the same bonuses, Cataclysm is still overpowering throughout its duration. So the more duration we have, the more it's going to overpower. So Endless Tempest passive is even more powerful in this version of the build. Second most important stat is Willpower. Crit strike chance and movement speed, not really important. Now when it comes to Mjolnir Ring, a lot of people get this wrong, so just for a bit of advice. This is a huge damage range on this item. It goes as low as 40 and as high as 100%. Your priority here to get the ring with the biggest damage roll. It doesn't matter if it's ancestral or not, just get the first ring that you have as close to 100 as possible. Only then your next step is to replace it with an ancestral ring of similar value. Don't take an ancestral ring that has like 50 or 60 or 70% just because it's ancestral, because you will lose a ton of damage there. Alright guys, let's talk about the Paragon board now. Now again, Paragon is exactly the same as it was in the snapshotting build in Season 7. So this is mostly meant for people who are checking out this build for the first time. If you're coming back from Season 7, feel free to skip this portion of the video as well. You will have full Paragon board as well on the build, which I will link in the description of the video. So I will just quickly go over Paragon board. I won't go over every single node that you can pick. The most important thing is to make sure to unlock all the glyphs, all the legendary nodes, and to unlock both bonuses for all glyphs. This will take you around 190 to 200 Paragon points. So this build comes online very easily. Don't be intimidated by the fact that I have over 280 points. You don't need nearly as much, I promise you. Anyway, let's get straight to it. We're starting off with Electrocution. Electrocution increases our lightning bolt damage, which in turn increases our Cataclysm damage thanks to the Mjolnir Ring. We're starting with this board because here is the biggest concentration of normal nodes. So once we max everything out, this is our first stop. We return here and then we grab every single willpower here because, as you can see, on max level, every single willpower node increases our lightning bolt damage by 62%. Even though this is additive damage, it adds up very quickly. But basically, Electrocution first, then our second board is Thunderstruck. This is just a massive 60% damage multiplier, so you want to make sure you have this bonus as close to 60 as possible. The items should help you greatly with this, so if you have all the items that I put into build, you will have no problem reaching this goal. But if not, then maybe try tempering some damage versus close or damage versus distant to make sure you have this capped out. Our second glyph is Dominate, which drastically increases our overpower damage. Our third board is Ancestral Dominance. After we spend 75 spirit, we deal 40% increased damage, which is another huge multiplier. And this happens after every second cast of Pulverize. For the glyph, we're going with Spirit. This is a huge increase for critical strike damage, and it also provides further multipliers. Board number 4 is Lust for Carnage. Critical strikes with werewolf skills restore spirit and deal 50% extra multiplicative damage. And because of our Tempest Roar, our Cataclysm is a werewolf skill, so this is just a straight up 50% extra multiplicative damage. Here we're going with the Keeper for extra non-physical damage as well. And final board is Heightened Malice. We're dealing 35x multiplicative damage for poison enemies, which thanks to our boon are poisoned all the time. I will talk about that in the boon section. And also up to additional 20%, which makes for a total of 55% multiplicative damage. Our final glyph is Headhunter. Headhunter does two things. It provides us with a nice multiplicative damage bonuses, but it also, on level 100, doubles every willpower that we select around this board. So for example, this is 10 willpower instead of 5, and because willpower damage double dips on this build, this is just another extra source of damage we have available. So once you unlock every single glyph, unlock all the bonuses for those glyphs, and you unlock all the legendary nodes, with any extra points to spare, first you return here, you grab every single willpower in range, like I mentioned. Then your second stop is the third board where your spirit glyph is. You want to grab every dexterity available to increase your critical strike damage, and then you're going on Dominate glyph and you grab every extra intelligence around here for extra overpower damage. These are additive bonuses, but again, they add up a lot. If by any chance you still have remaining bonuses, your final stop is the Headhunter glyph, where you're grabbing all the willpower in range just to get some extra willpower out there. Also, make sure you grab every life note you can on the board, and if you have extra points to spare, the last board especially has some pretty nice defensive bonuses. For example, damage reduction from poison enemies, this is 12, and you will have no problem hitting that if you have Shroud of False Death. This is 3, 3, 3, so for a total of 21% damage reduction from poison enemies, which is huge considering they're poisoning enemies all the time. So just something to consider. But once again, you do have this in the planner, so just follow it along and grab any life nodes, any defensive bonuses that you have points for. Let's talk about Spirit Boons. We're taking Wariness for 15% damage reduction, Iron Feather for max life, because again, on overpowered builds, life equals more damage, and Avian Wrath, this is a huge critical strike damage multiplier. We're grabbing Calamity, this greatly extends the duration of our Cataclysm, and we're also taking Overload. Every time we deal damage with storm skills, we apply poison. This is how we proc Envenom and other bonuses that require us to have poisoned enemies. Runewords are one of the major differences between this build and the build from the live version or Season 7. The reason being is that two most popular runes used in this build, for example Zan and Quacks, have been basically completely nerfed to the ground. So in Season 8, Zan now only lasts for 0.25 seconds, while Quacks lasts for 1 second. So it is not possible for us to use them anymore in this build because they do not carry over throughout the entire duration of Cataclysm. So we need replacements. For Runeword number 1, we're going with Back Zack. Once we travel 10 meters, we reduce our active ultimate cooldown by 1 second. We're always in combat, we're always active, always on the move. This basically means that Cataclysm is pretty much always ready whenever we need it to be. For a second one, here I'm going with Igni Gar because I need extra crit strike chance on this build, but you won't have that problem in Season 8 because of the boss power, which I will get into soon. So instead of Igni Gar, you can simply replace this with Xal Rune, which will give you 20% maximum life for 6 seconds. And if we overflow, which we often will, we will get even more life. And remember, life equals damage in overpower build. So not only do we have more life to survive the encounters, we also deal more damage. This is the best in slot. However, there are other things you can play with. You can put an arm rune if you want 15% more damage. You can put something more defensive like Mott, but Xal is going to be best in slot. It's also going to be featured in the build. Alright guys, it's time to talk about the new boss powers. Now this is going to be the build that I made in Diablo 4 builds, which I will also link down below, both in comments and in description of the video, so you can always have a reference for a skill tree, Paragon, etc. But here we're specifically looking at the boss powers. So first of all, our main boss power is going to be Lord Zir's Blood Pool. The damage behind this is irrelevant, but we need a boss power that's going to be active all of the time. So every time we do damage, and we're doing damage whether it's Maul or Polarize or anything else, we're doing damage all the time, blood pools are going to be spawning. Now again, we don't care about the blood pools themselves, but modifier number 1 is Belial's Eye Beams. Once we activate our main boss power, which again is going to be happening all the time, we'll be gaining Unbreakable Stealth for 2 seconds. That's less important. What's more important is that we deal 30% extra multiplicative increased overpower damage while stealth. So this is just a nice little overpower bonus on top of other overpower bonuses we already have. The third boss power, or the second modifier, probably the most important in this entire bunch, is Hatred's Embraces Haste. This is what's giving us 100% crit strike chance without the need to invest any further into the gear. So we gain +5 for every 1% of our shadow res, but this also counts all resistances as well. A great thing about this boss power is This is a magic variety boss power, so you're going to be able to get it during these Belial incursion events that happen all the time on the map. So the very second you actually make the character, you can already participate in these events. I suggest you grab this power ASAP. At max level, it grants 70% extra crit strike chance. This is going to cap us out and allow us to overpower and crit at the same time all of the time. And lastly, we have Flesh Reaper's Disruption. This is just another multiplier. We gain 5% multiplicative vulnerable damage for every 1% of crowd control duration. We're going to have this capped at 20. This is a tooltip error. 30% is the cap, but it's a nice multiplier on top of everything else we have going on this build. And finally, we came to the most important section of this build and probably the biggest difference between current live version and Season 8, which is the gameplay portion. So first and foremost, the entire gameplay revolves around this passive. When we remain in very bare form for an X amount of time, our next non-defensive skill overpowers. However, the description of the passive is a little bit misleading. We don't actually need to be in bare form all the time because the passive tracks how many seconds we spent in a bare form and then it simply continues where we left off. Let me demonstrate what I mean. So over here I have Mole. My basic version is human form, which I am right now, even if you can't see properly because of the stealth. But basically, I hit once with the mole, and I remain in bare form for 4 seconds. Which means over here, at 8 stacks, it overpowers. I already have 4 stacks. So as long as I don't cast any other skill that's going to overwrite my form, the bear form keeps for full 4 seconds just for one single cast of a bear ability. Our main bear abilities are Maul and Polarize. So again, I hit Maul once and it counts down to 8. Now my next skill is going to overpower. Any non-defensive skill, but this even means Hurricane, is going to trigger this buff. So the only safe skills to cast are Earthen Bulwark and Cyclone Armor, which you don't really need to cast anyway. We always want to make sure that when our buff is at 8 or 12 if you don't have the Shroud, that the next offensive skill we cast is Cataclysm. As you can see now it is overpowering, even though I am not wearing Zand Rune anywhere in my inventory. So the gameplay loop is as follows. The very second you enter an area, doesn't matter if it's the pit or Hell Tides or whatever, you instantly hit Maul. Even if it's just hitting the air, because you want to get this provocation buff going. So as long as you don't cast any other skill that's going to override it, it's already going to give you half of the stacks that you need just because you pressed Maul once. Now on the basic gameplay, you're casting Maul all the time to get Fortify, to get the uptime. We're using Polarize all the time to get the Ancestral Guidance buff as well. So naturally and organically during the gameplay, you will have this on pretty much all the time. You just always have to be mindful of the buff and what number next to the buff it is. So as you can see, again, I am at 8 stacks. The next skill is going to overpower. So Hurricane can also eat up this buff. As you can see, once I cast Hurricane, even if it didn't hit anything, I have to start all over again. However, if my Hurricane is already active and I already have 8 stacks, they do not get consumed. Hurricane procs are Storm Shifters and Earthen Bulwark procs are Backlash passive for up to 16% damage multiplication. So the rotation is as follows. Once we have 7 here, I cast Hurricane immediately. This is going to interrupt further stacks because I just used a non-bear skill. The next time I cast Maul or Polarize, I will hit 8, which is the max stacks. Once I hit 8, I want to use Cataclysm. I want to make sure Cataclysm is the only skill that can consume the Overpower buff. So again, at 7 stacks, I cast Hurricane, I cast Earthen Bulwark to get the buffs, then I will cast Maul one more time, and then I will cast Cataclysm. So, observe. As you can see, I am overpowering and critting at the same time, and again, I did not use Zand Rune to do it. And that is essentially the gameplay. Once again, you will be getting these stacks organically throughout the play, but always have to be mindful of the number. When it's at 7, interact the stacks by casting Hurricane, then Bulwark, then get to the 8 stacks, and then you cast Cataclysm. I messed up here, but it doesn't matter as long as you follow the rotation. We also have Flicker Step. You can evade through the opponents to gain Cataclysm quicker, although you will not really struggle with Cataclysm cooldown in this build, so that's not important. What is important that, unlike in the live version, you don't want to be hitting Cataclysm every single time it's on cooldown, because you want to be careful to make sure you only hit it when this says 8. So now is okay. But for example, if I cast Maul again and I only have 3 or 4 stacks, then I don't want to refresh the duration of Cataclysm. I want to wait until I have 8 stacks, because only then is my Cataclysm going to overpower. Now again, this is 12 stacks if you don't have the Shroud of False Death, so I strongly encourage you to get this item as fast as you can if you wish to play this version of Cataclysm build. I understand it can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of it, but just come here to Kyoshad, to training grounds, practice a little bit, and you will get the hang of it, I promise. In my opinion, it's a lot easier to set up than the snapshot build, so all you have to do is watch the buff counter. Because we can no longer snapshot, this also means that you will have to do this for every single cast of Cataclysm. That's why the Endless Tempest on your Mjolnir ring is especially useful, because the longer Cataclysm lasts, the less time you need to spend doing this. Now that I showed you the gameplay loop, we'll be heading over to the pit just for a quick demonstration on how this actually looks in practice. Alright guys, so here we are in pit 100. This is just a quick showcase for you to see how this build works in an actual setting. Now, there are a couple of challenges with trying to show you this build in the current live version. The main challenge is that in the live version we are still able to snapshot, which actually messes with the way this build is set up. And the other issue is that in Season 8 you're going to be able to crit all the time because of the boss power, but in this version I still can't. But still, nonetheless, I shouldn't have really any real issue with pit 100 regardless. So first, whenever you're in a new area, the pit, Hell Tides, whatever, you cast Maul once in the air to get the Provocation box going. And now I'm just gonna walk here. And that's it. At stack 7 I activated Hurricane, then Earthen Bulwark. At stack 8 I cast one Maul and then Cataclysm, just like I mentioned. As you will notice, I don't have any real issues with clearing these mobs, but also one thing that I did, I took off half of my offensive witch powers, just to demonstrate that even with Season 8 boss powers, you still shouldn't have any issues following this build, at very least when it comes to clearing Torment 4 content. Even though it has been heavily redesigned and it's a lot harder, you still really shouldn't struggle as long as you follow my build and the way that I set it up. And there you have it guys, this has been a complete video guide for Season 8 Cataclysm Druid. The new edition of this build promises to be almost as powerful as it was in Season 7, with some minor tweaks and details. The most important changes basically being just how the build actually plays and the gameplay loop itself. We're using still the same items, we're using the same Paragon, and we're tweaking the runes and skills just ever so slightly. And so as long as you follow the gameplay loop that I showed you, everything should be as competitive as it was in Season 7. Now again, to be fair, I did not manage to test this build with the new boss powers on the PTR, so if some new unintended interaction comes up in the new season, I will make sure to keep you guys know. I will keep the written guide updated at all times, so if I do find something that works better, always refer to the guide first and video second. So, what are your thoughts on this build? Are you looking to play it? Or maybe some of my other builds that I made during the PTR, which you can check out right here? Let me know down in the comments. And again, these videos take a long time to make, so if you like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing. It helps me tremendously, and it tells me that you guys want to see more of these kind of theory craftings, builds, build guides, etc. I love making them, so as long as you guys love watching them, I will continue to do so. Anyway, Happy holidays and happy Easter if you're celebrating. I hope you're taking it easy on this Sunday, and I will be seeing you in the next one.